Bullied. Johnny was drowning. The stench and taste of chlorine consumed his senses, and the thought that he would die, lungs full of toilet water, didn't help either. In his yet waking consciousness, he noticed suddenly that the desire to live was no longer there. What was the point of it all, really? To come back the next day and face more of the same? He'd spent his years in high school surviving the most brutal forms of bullying. Day after day, his torturers envisioned and implemented more pain and suffering. His entire body was always sore, covered with all manners of small bruises and cuts. What was worse is nobody cared. The one time he actually spoke about it and told a teacher got him detention, and then constant visits to the creepy Dr. Biter, the school psychologist. The useless idiot paraded him before the entire school and dropped a speech on how everyone had to fight bullying. And of course, it got worse after that. Was Johnny not like the other kids? And even in some way repulsive to them? At first, he tried desperately to appease his bullies, spending his meager allowance showering them with treats. Spoke to them with respect, not that they deserved any, but to spare himself the form of humiliation and more pain. It didn't work. They toyed with him even more. He tried talking like them, walking like them, even listening to the same music. Felt even more depressing, and in some way Johnny sensed how his mind and soul got stained irreparably by that. Back home, his mom didn't care that much about him either. It was his sister who she had with another man that got his mother cared more about. Johnny was living in his late father's garage and slept in his old car. During winter's harshest and coldest nights, he desperately fought with his tired and sleep deprived body. He'd read all about the White Death in the school library and feared that if he did lapse, they would find his frozen corpse later, after he missed a week or two of school. Maybe. This time, however, his torturers decided to let him go. Johnny fell to the dirty bathroom floor and inhaled. His oxygen deprived brain registered the cheerful laughters of his bullies, and someone said, "Quick, take his clothes off. I want to see his cis ass running around naked." The rest chuckled, and after one more sound kick to the head, Johnny was forcefully stripped from his clothes. They took his old pants, ripped his shirt to pieces, and stuffed his raggedy shoes in the toilet. Then they kicked his battered body in the outer hall and locked the door behind. Crawling, Johnny somehow got to the school yard. Luckily, he missed most of the other students since they were already back in class. Next to the yard shack, shaking, Johnny met old Kirby, the school handyman. He sighed and gave the kid one of his spare shirts, work pants, and a pair of old rubber boots. Back home, his mother went all ballistic on him for losing his clothes and went on a tirade on how she was providing so much for him and he was just an inconsiderate, rowdy brat. Listening to her and seeing the disgusted facial expression of his half sister, Johnny finally snapped, stood up, and simply left the house, disappearing into the night. Lying to rest near some garbage bin later, Johnny uncovered one old, rusty axe, and looking at its blade, made his final decision. Next day, during PE class, his bullies saw Johnny approaching them. He was carrying something long, wrapped in a bunch of dirty rags, and they immediately started laughing. He got closer, eyes empty, his face an emotionless mask as he pulled the rags apart and swung with all his strength. Soon the death screams of his bullies filled the schoolyard. They ran away from him, but he ran faster. Beautiful at any size. Didn't help when you had to run for your life from somebody with nothing to lose, wielding an axe dripping with the blood, brains, and guts of your friends. Johnny was shot by the cops much later, after he'd axed to death all of his tormentors. The next day, school psychologist and headmistress organized an anti-axe rally. It was mandatory for all students who came with their own posters receive extra credit. Battle axe. Hey, Johnny boy, wake up. You got 2 on your 6. The voice of CNC echoed in his ear as Johnny executed the best rapid turn he could under the circumstances and fired his starfighter's twin laser cannons. Sliced in two, the enemy ship exploded and he shouted back. CNC, I see only 1 on my scanners. Repeat the number of attackers again, please. His snarky answer was met with a murmur only because CNC was under the command of his father. Cocky little bastard, isn't he? The second enemy fighter tried to evade him, but his piloting skills was far superior. A split second later, another streak of blue beams found the target's main engine exhaust. Don't know, Dad. You and Mom should know better. Johnny noticed something in his scanners. One small starship was about to exit hyperspace very close to him. He changed course, pushed his starfighter's engines to the limit, piloting an intercept course, switching off his life support system, and directed all energy into his laser cannons. The ship's heat sinks began to show critical overload, but Johnny didn't care much. He had his duty to his family, his friends, and loved ones back home. The enemy starship slipped out of hyperspace exactly where his calculations predicted, and Johnny, aiming straight at the unshielded bridge, unleashed the overloaded laser beams from point-blank range. Enemy energy shields came on after a split second and then waned, their entire bridge melting and burning. The starship careened off course. A few seconds later, 2 of the light bombers swooped in towards the rudderless, unshielded corvette, ripping its hull with a couple of torpedoes. Good job, Battle Axe. That's your 3rd assist for this fight alone. Don't you think it's high time you transfer from Intercept to Bomber Command? Nah, you jokers can have all the fun stuffing enemy warship bellies full of torps. I like to chase better. He responded with his cocky bomber pilots and checked his sensor screen again. Yet another hyperdump. Johnny quickly shouted on the comms. "Another one, boys. Big one this time. Get stealthy and wait for me to attack first." "Roger. 3152nd, CNC Battle Axe and Dagger 1 are executing a silent attack. Condition Stalker." Johnny and the two bombers deactivated all their main system and aimlessly drifted in space, their ships cooling, stealth armor making them almost invisible. In the background, from all that distant shots and explosion, radiation was beginning to affect spaceship's sensors. And so the enemy vessel slipped out of hyperspace with Johnny and the two bombers right beside. Johnny activated all ship systems and his machine streaked towards the enemy, catching them completely unawares. During the precious seconds they needed to raise their shields and aim their guns at him, he managed to strafe their hangar bay. Multiple accurate hits from his two laser cannons melted and bent the closed doors, denying their ship any and all fighter support. Time was working against them now, and with bombers close by, that ship could defend itself with guns only. Again and again, he strafed the hull, carefully aiming his laser each time, destroying more of the enemy cannons. Soon, both the bombers launched their deadly ordnance, and the three of them darted away on full engine burn, with a huge plasma ball behind them. The skilled teen, now a veteran fighter pilot, eagerly grasped his starship's controls and came to a sudden realization. He was, and always would be, a starfighter. If you enjoyed this telling, then considering supporting the author, the Black Knight, on Patreon, as well as Amazon. He can also be found most commonly on Minds.com. And if you're feeling, support this channel with thumbs up, a comment, and subscribing. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day. Farewell.